public meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, for those who have passed away in our community recently, especially Bill Walsh of Manuka, who passed away Sunday, June 13th. Mr. Walsh was a Scranton police officer who retired as a detective after 35 years of service. And let's also remember all those suffering due to the pandemic. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Gaughan?
Here. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, agenda for the City Planning Commission meeting held June 17th, 2021. 3B, single tax office financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2018. 3C, controller's report for month ending May 31st, 2021. 3D, minutes of the Scranton Police Pension Commission meeting held May 19th, 2021. 3E, correspondence received from the Department of the Auditor General dated June 9th, 2021 regarding conducting a performance audit of the Scranton Single Tax Office. 3F, correspondence from the tax collector dated June 10th, 2021 sent to the Auditor General regarding audit of Scranton Single Tax Office. 3G, correspondence received from Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated June 10th, 2021, regarding the appointment of Dr. Rashna Saxena to the position of Public Health Coordinator.
Thank you. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? I have two comments. So it was brought to our attention 3B, the single tax office financial statements. There may be pages missing. It jumps from page 2 to page 4, and then to page 8. So Mr. Voldenberg is going to check that out before next week. And if there are any additional pages that we're missing, we'll include that in third order in full. The other question that was brought up during the caucus was in regard to the controller's report. There was a significant expenditure in the amount of $9 million, and council would like an explanation on that and what that was for before next week. Anyone else? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I have one quick one. PennDOT will be holding online public meetings on the West Lackawanna Ave Bridge and the Elm Street Bridge replacement projects on June 30th. The Elm Street Bridge meeting will take place at 5 p.m. and the West Lackawanna Ave Bridge meeting will take place at 7 p.m. The public can register for these meetings by contacting Michael Grantner, project manager for both projects, by calling 215-913-5998. The public can also submit comment on each project until July 16th by contacting PennDOT's project manager, Summer Koziel, at skoziel@pa.gov, or by calling 570-963-4048. The plans for each project can also be found at the bottom of the DPW page on the city's website.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Yes, I have one. Last week, I believe I failed to mention that over the weekend, there was a celebration held for Juneteenth on Saturday, which has now also been federally recognized as a holiday thanks to President Biden. And the celebration, I think, was a success despite the weather that day, but it was also to celebrate the soon-to-be opening of the new center for the Black Scranton project. It's also going to be an art center, and that's located in North Scranton on Main Avenue and West Market. So that was an exciting day, and I just wanted to congratulate Black Scranton on the success of their project.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
The first speaker for tonight's meeting is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, city resident. First thing is old business, and if you would respond during fifth order, I would appreciate it. The first thing, you and I talked about the status of Leech Creek and the undersized pipe, and I've gotten the folder from the city clerk, which will take some time to review. But if you could, in fifth order, just let the general public know what's happening with that situation. Next, has there been any progress in the city's ongoing dispute with the County Tax Claim Bureau? Have the city and county representatives met to discuss a new agreement to reduce the 10% charge that delinquent taxpayers are paying for legal fees? If you could give us a status on that, if you know if there's been any progress or any communication with the county. I don't think it's fair for taxpayers who may have lost their jobs be hit with that kind of legal fee. Next, what is the monetary value of Robert Saul's gift of furniture for the mayor's office, and has that gift been reviewed by the city's ethics board? I do think that would fall under the provisions of the ethics code. Next, when will the current collective bargaining agreements for the single tax office and the firefighters union be posted on the city's website? About a year ago, I personally asked Mayor Cognetti to post all the union and collective bargaining agreements on the website, and she did that. Mostly, the firefighters union only had an MOU. But since then, the firefighters MOU has completely dissolved, it's been deleted. And the single tax office, their document has been deleted. And I think since the taxpayers pick up the bill for the salaries and wages and benefits for 90% of the city's employees, they should be on the website for their review. And next, will future collective bargaining agreements with the city's unions be reconciled with the city's ethics code? I don't understand the logic of having an ethics code and it does not apply to the vast majority of city employees. Now under new business. First, yes, you and I did talk about the fact that the single tax office's financial statements were missing several pages. I think it's incumbent upon the public, as they look at the agenda as it's posted on the city's website, to pay attention to little things like that, because the financial statements make 0 sense with that many pages missing. Next, with regard to the resolution for a $225,000 grant for the Sorrenti Center, I'd like to know how much money have we spent on the Sorrenti Center up to this point, and how much more money do we need to invest in it for its renovations? This has been going on for well over a year, and I think it's time for the public to have an update. Next, with regard to the controller's report, as you mentioned, on page 2, there is a non-departmental expenditure for special items for $8,970,803.95. This entry demands a footnote. That is a significant part of the city's budget, and I've made this comment before, that extraordinary entries like that should not just be dropped and walked away. They need footnotes. And finally, I don't have a problem with the mayor's appointing Dr. Saxena as public health coordinator, since the Moses Taylor Foundation is picking up her salary for the next 3 years. The question is, after 3 years, where's the funding going to come from? Or does that position go open, or will it be added to the budget? And I'll await your answers in fifth order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hodowanitz. Next speaker is Jack White.
Hi, Jack White, beautiful, diverse, accepting hill section, Scranton. Doctor, misters, good evening. Hope you all had a good, healthy, safe Father's Day. For those of us who aren't biological parents, it takes a village, and I hope your village is safe and loving and kind and healthy. Let's see. There still hasn't, nice stop clock, by the way. No more time debates. There is still no street washing in the Hill anywhere. Noise pollution continues louder and longer than ever. Safety situation at Lackawanna and Wyoming continues. Chewing gum on the sidewalk under the mall bridge on Lackawanna Avenue. It sticks to your shoes, and then it goes to your home. Children playing, eat it, saying, "Mommy, this is so good, I want more." Have a good night, folks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. I'm just wondering if any of the council members have a copy of the request I made of council and the mayor?
Yes, we do have it.
Okay. What's your opinion on that, Mr. Gaughan? Do you think that the mayor and the council should put that on the ballot for the residents of the city?
Well, let's put it this way. You sent this letter in March of 2020, and the number one here says abolish the Home Rule Charter. So it's not as easy as just abolishing it. There's a process that you have to go through, as you probably well know. So we are having our solicitor look at that process and what that entails, but it's not just as easy as, lighting a match and letting the Home Rule Charter burn. You have
No, I do understand the process, but...
And like with anything else, with something of that magnitude, you have to put some thought into it. And I would do that before I would make any comment on making such a drastic move.
Well, I understand that, but the Home Rule Charter can be put on the ballot by the council and the mayor without collecting signatures at this time, and whether the members of the commission that sit and meet and discuss the charter and city residents who make determinations on what they want from a new charter, or whether they want to abolish the charter, or whether they want to change council's role in government, or the mayor's, or abolish any office, or change the way business is conducted, and the ability to tax wrapped into that charter. That's one of the most important tools the residents of this city could have, because we can all say that we represent anybody, but that's not necessarily true. I've been in this chamber for 30 years. There's a host of former council members that just passed atrocious things through council and then left town. And the residents are still left with the mess. There was a commission that sat previously, but they just didn't put a charter together that had any real teeth. And I think that this city can never change, and I think that without the input of the residents, and my own personal opinion is that the residents are severely overtaxed. And, all these reassessments and all. I mean, look at your own agenda today. You're moving money from one account to another. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. We've got a President of the United States talking about spending trillions, and we're already in debt to our grandkids, and they're not going to get any benefit of any of the money that's being spent now, and our standard of living continues to erode. So the people need a council who needs to stop saying they represent the people that elected them. If at this time they're going to force people to go out door to door and collect signatures after we just went through COVID. I think it's ridiculous. I think it shows just the amount of contempt that the government has for the residents. The council and the mayor could have looked at that letter much sooner. But now you know that I didn't lie to you, that I had presented it. The mayor talked about it on the radio and said she was totally too busy at that time. Somebody's got to do something for the people in this city. We're losing our elementary schools, and then people are leaving the school board and coming to this body and abandoning the children in the neighborhoods. It's just atrocious. And in regards to your comment, Mr. Gaughan, about speaking at this podium, I think the only way to determine whether you can do what you assume to think you can do is to walk you down to the Lackawanna County Courthouse and have you stand in front of a judge and you tell him, because I asked your clerk where the judge's ruling was that says you can't do what you just tried to do to me last week. And you should ask your attorney what defiant indifference to a judge's order means. Okay, because your role as president of this council doesn't give you the ability to stifle any free speech here, and no one needs your permission to speak on any issue. And the policeman you had standing here the other day, he doesn't have the authority to take somebody from this podium that you don't agree with. Keep that in mind. And if I have to go down to the courthouse, I'll spend the money, and I'll bring you down with me. Okay? Just keep that in your mind. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night. Look forward to it. Next speaker is Wes Spindler.
Anyway, Council Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner, taxpayer. Once again, I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, pave cuts. The gas company was on my block again last week, made the fourth cut on that block in like maybe the last month or two. And as I said last time, they don't fill it in good. Already, the four cuts they made, there's like potholes in them already. You got to slow down to go over them. And the cut they made last week, it went right past the curb into my neighbor's property, and they had to dig up a sidewalk. They threw blacktop in where the sidewalk was. Now, I'm not sure if I know the law, but I think they have to replace that sidewalk. Maybe they will in the future, but I know if that was me, I'd be screaming about it. Okay, I don't know if this is city business or not, but I think it is because it affects everybody in this city. I was glad to hear about our legislators in Washington passing the Juneteenth holiday as a national holiday. But I think the Republicans are hypocrites because they passed that law and they're passing bills to limit the voting rights of the people who celebrate Juneteenth. So I think they're all hypocrites. And I think the people of color, when the next election comes up next year, they should remember that when they go to the polling place. Lastly, I guess next Tuesday we won't have to wear masks anymore. Because Monday's the 28th, and that's when the mask mandate ends.
No, I believe it was when Pennsylvania reached 70% vaccination rate.
It was the 28th or 70%.
Well, we'll
whichever came
follow
first.
whatever the state says, and if the state says that, then we'll be happy to see
Well,
everybody
that's what
without a
it is.
mask.
They said it's the 28th or 70%, whichever came first.
Okay, well, there
So
you
if we
go.
don't reach 70% by next Monday, you don't have to wear your mask.
You said it. There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
you.
Have a good night. Norma Jeffries?
Barbara Jeffries, city resident. And the first thing I wanted to talk about tonight was, I think I've mentioned it before, and Les has mentioned it as well, is the intersection of Clay and Vine Street. And I'd like to give you a copy of it if I can. I have nothing else to do here today since I'm retired, so I'm out. And I took a picture of it the other day.
Thank you.
And what I did was take a picture of it and to sort of mark down the sheet what's on the ground. There's no markings on the ground at all, as you can see from the picture. So I can understand why traffic and cars are parking right up to that corner. And I'm sure that anyone that lives in any section of the city and goes up Vine Street has a difficult time getting out of that intersection. You're halfway out in the intersection and there's right away. We have to stop on Vine Street, but coming up Clay Avenue, they have the right of way. And because it's coming up a hill, they're really gassing it to get up that hill. So I also look to see in around that area, and there's quite a few updated markings on the ground as far as the street crossings, and the markings, they've all been marked. So I couldn't understand why they skipped that area and didn't mark off no parking at that intersection. And then I thought maybe it's the university's property, because it is close to the university and all the university living around there. So I thought, well, maybe it belongs to the university, but if someone could find out about that for it's not only me, but anyone that's traveling up that street. And I've even had neighbors come up to me and say, Norma, can you speak again about that? You know, so here I am. My second thing I wanted to ask about, me and my street signs. I haven't seen any updated street signs on the street, and I was just wondering how that's coming along. What's the advancement of it? Is there a map? Is there a time frame as to where the streets are going to be? Just like you put in the on the city's website about the paving streets and where the streets were going to be paved. So I was wondering, I said, maybe we could see a list of where the street signs are going to go up, because I haven't seen any. And I keep looking because that's my hot button, is the street signs. And the third thing I have on here is I just wanted to give a thank you to anyone that was involved with the Juneteenth celebration that was this weekend. It was more than I had ever expected. And I know that a lot of people probably don't know or did not know about Juneteenth, because I myself only found out about it after about 10 years ago. They were having a festival in Philadelphia. And I thought, what is that? So because I didn't know, I went and found out. So as a black young lady, you know, mature adult, I thought, okay, I've got to find out. So I did go to the library and to find out about it and learned about it. And I was just quite amazed that they didn't teach us that in school. Nothing was ever taught to us. I was educated here in the schools of Scranton. Nothing was ever taught. I went to Lackawanna College, and then I went to Arcadia, well, Beaver College, which is now Arcadia, and nothing was ever talked about. So it's been 10 years ago that I learned about it. So I'm asking, and just want to thank all the people that were involved this past week. It was wonderful. And anybody that didn't get a chance to go, you know, over this next year, I would suggest that you Google it, find out all you can about it, go to the public library and get books and read about it. And so that next year, when we have the Juneteenth celebration, you'll be more informed about it. And one final thing I have to say is that I just, my hat off to Glennis John. I remember she stood here at this podium. I was just back in town then, so I didn't know who she was. So I was asking my family, who is she, who is she, who is she? But since then, I found out who she is and what a dynamic job she's doing. And I just think she deserves the whole support of the city and anyone, as she asked for donations. I mean, I give a little $10 here and there, but every little $10, $5 helps that organization. And I'm only speaking, I'm not on the board or anything, I'm just speaking as a very proud citizen of Scranton, that we had such a great turnout on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffries. And Mr. Voldenberg, can you inquire about the issues that Mrs. Jeffries raised?
I will, Mr. Gaughan.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ron Ellman.
Yes, good evening, Council. Ronnie Ellman. First off, I would like to thank Brother Bill for his objections to the extension of the lounges. This is an asinine idea. It's not thought out very well. It means nothing but more problems that any city doesn't need. Alcohol has touched my lips before, and you think you want me to sit down when my time is up. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they put me outside the tourist club so fast, you know, sometimes my coat and everything's inside. That's all somebody needs. And again, the editor of the paper had this nonsense about reassessment. He printed an idea that we should use half the incoming $40 million for reassessment in a city that every inch needs something around us. They are so obsessed with reassessment, it's just, there's not a house in this area that hasn't been taxed 2, 3, 4 times over the year. I talked to a fellow a few months ago. His family has lived in the house, the same property, since 1946, and he was telling me the taxes in 1946, whatever they were, he said they're about 10 times higher now. That's how everything, my house is pushing 3 times what it was when I bought it. And I worked then. Talk about working. I saw in the paper today all these do-gooders marching all over town wanting the environmental. You close that landfill, $300 tax bill would seem like a blessing when you have to start shipping it out to Higgins or wherever. People are not thinking, I'm sure something equitable could be worked out. The problem, the landfill has been there over 100 years. You know, it was next door is where it used to be. Sedgwick, is that his name? Sedgwick. He built a bunch of houses on a pile of slag coal. They are so poorly built. A few years ago, when the expressway, they were working on the expressway, they had to stop because of damage to the houses. There's the problem. The Friends of Lackawanna want the rest of us to fight their battle for them. I don't know how to say it without getting somebody mad, but these people bought property, they just weren't thinking right. I've seen those houses before. I remember the field down there before it was built behind the big Triumph garage there that I used to go. My kids used to ride there. They had a 3-wheeler then. But I don't plan to fight any battle for the Friends of Lackawanna and have my taxes raised because of a landfill. And it won't be long, we'll have $5, $6 gasoline probably in the next few years. You can imagine the expense it's going to be to start shipping it to wherever. And I thank you again for, I hope something pleasant happens about closing the bars at 2 o'clock is long enough. And y'all keep this battle up and don't allow it in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman. Next speaker is Tom Coyne.
Tom Coyne, Manuka. I understand the frustration with the Home Rule Charter. I think it is a frustration that we have with every government body that in a tax, and when the community supplies a governmental body with the ability to tax, appropriate, and spend, that it gets to the point where we originally put them on to represent our best interests, where the public's best interests start to take a sideline, and because of obligations put before the governing body, they tend to become short-sighted on what is really impacting the people of the community. Government has always had the problem of, I have a blank check. I don't have to balance my budget, because if my budget has a shortfall, I don't have to go out and make more money, I just tax more money. It's an endless trough of digging into someone else's pocketbook to fill the need to fill up a bucket that you're spending without the city's, you're taking money from the people without actually being able to ask, is this what we really need? And I think it angers the people because of the blank check mentality that all they are is a pocketbook to continually go in. So I understand with the Home Rule Charter, there's an issue with the ability to tax people uncontested and unreigned as it's gone through court, where there are state regulations, but the Home Rule Charter gives the exceptions to that. And I don't think that was the original intention of the Home Rule Charter, but is expanded beyond its scope. And I think that is a legitimate issue that people may have grievances with. The second comment is this position that has been proposed. When I took a look at it, I said, perfectly fine, we do need a public safety or whatever the position is. And in looking at that documentation, I went, this person is being hired from the city, and they're in South Abington. The last time I remember, South Abington isn't part of the city of Scranton. And anyone who's employed by the city of Scranton has to move to the city of Scranton within a 6-month period. There's been no exception. We're no longer in an emergency, and now we're looking to hand a 3-year contract over because Dr. Rothchild cannot have it, because Dr. Rothchild is on this body here, and obviously there is no other competent doctor in the entire city of Scranton who could fill this position. We need to go to other cities because all Scranton doctors are incompetent. That's the only path I can think of, that our area is so devoid of intellect that we need to constantly go outside of our city boundaries, ignore the legislation that says when we hire them, they have to stay here. They have to be from here. There is the excuse of, well, we're not paying for this. That doesn't matter. If I move to Philadelphia and I decide to have a position here in city government as the arbitrator of city council, and because someone else paid for that position, it goes through, and now I have fiat to void any council positions just because we don't have to follow the laws and structures. We don't have to follow procedures because someone else paid for it. That is a serious problem. Doesn't matter where the money came from, and it may be and there may be good intentions behind it. But again, there has been a constant push to put forward people into office, to sign them in there and give them an excuse for living elsewhere and not following the rules for specific parties. And in looking at the documentation today, I noticed that Mr. Dealey was on some of the stuff for the governing body of the city. I thought he was IT. Which position does he handle at this point? Because it seems to be on operations on some of the documentation signed, and I thought it was IT as well. So is he doing both jobs? Is the new person in that position not doing it until, or I just don't understand where that position has been cut off from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. The next speaker is David Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson. I'm sure you can hear me. And keep my mask on and protest the people that don't want to get their vaccine. Last week we had an issue here, and it was here again this week, but the same subject wasn't raised. We have 3 former school directors here, and I have a question. How much annually is the Scranton School District shorted in subsidies, which I presume are based on income and various other matters in the city, and the income of the parents? And
I believe it's somewhere in between 32 and 40 million.
How much?
It's somewhere in between 32 and 40 million. I don't have the exact
40
number in
million,
front of me.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was that, and I just wanted to... Now, when did it start? Under Mr. Corbett, right? Governor Corbett. And obviously our friend that was here again tonight was a Republican. Well, you people have a lot of nerve not being able to solve all the problems that the Republicans create. What's the matter with you? That's all I have to say on it. I mean, it's really, that's all I hear on TV or whatever. Now, when not to mention that we have 36% tax exempt properties, some are state and federal buildings, and you name it, defense contractors. And, as I left the house, I was glued to the chair because at this time, and the vote's already probably taken place, to put the For the People Act up to debate, not to vote, just up for debate. And once again, the Republican Party doesn't want to hear it. They don't even want to debate it. They don't want to carry on investigations on January 6th. They don't want to have this come out in the news, because people will find that it's not only just minority people, but it's young that are working. I voted at 7:45 several times when I lived up in Susquehanna County, and I worked all the way in Music. It's going to be young, old, disabled, minorities, racial or ethnic, and just about anybody that doesn't feel that standing in line for 6 or 8 hours is appropriate. And then on top of it, the state legislatures may vote themselves the right to overturn the ballot on top of it. So in other words, if you have a Democrat legislature, which, you know, I don't know if they'd overturn the ballot, But they could, if you had 2/3 of the people voting Republican, they could reject that candidate and send a new bunch of electors to Washington. And we have several, Dan Muser, Mr. Keller, building his little wall with his kitties and, you know, with the little building blocks, how cute, you know, how quaint. But I'm sorry, that's not acceptable to me. 7 million eligible voters in Texas could have voted and did not for various reasons. Over 100,000 purged in Georgia in the, 2018 election. And by the way, over in Iran, they just held an election. And the Religious Council rejected probably about a dozen out of 16 candidates or more. And we have another radical in there, and you know, it just keeps getting better and better. But call your senators at 888-453-3211. And I called that twice today. They're supposed to direct you to each and every senator, but I think Casey got so many calls and agrees so much that he said, please stop. But I did get in touch with Mr. Toomey, and I asked him to do the American thing.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a good night. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council?
Good evening, Council. George Semien, proud downtown resident. I can actually say that. So I have a couple questions, concerns actually. Is Tom Oleski still in charge of enforcement?
Yes.
That you're aware of? Well, he doesn't return calls, but needless to say.
I think he was out on, with the medical issue.
Okay.
Or out on some kind of issue.
Is there anyone else in that department that?
There should be, yes.
Okay. Well, here's the thing downtown. The building that was on fire, the boot business on the corner of Linden and what's that, Penn, it's condemned to come down. I don't know when it's going to come down, but it's falling down. Not only that, in the back, this gentleman is still operating out of the building. I've called Chris at the mayor's office. Nothing happened. This guy is there on Saturday. The building is, it's a mess, and no one's doing anything about it to get this guy out of there. That's number one. I walk my dog downtown all the time, so I'm a little, my blood pressure's up about a lot of this stuff, so I'll be here for a couple weeks because I'm not gonna get my questions out there today. So that's one of my big concerns because it's just a big safety issue. The other one is, if you're coming, it's right before the Electric City building. There was a restaurant and there's a building there. And there was a violation on the building. It's not condemned, but people were not supposed to go in there. Walked by there Saturday night, guys in there, they tore the thing off the window, and they're operating. I mean, come on. Like, this is just crazy. And of course, no one returns my call about it, and I feel like the police, but, you know, these are safety issues. People are gonna get hurt, you know, and like nothing's being done about it. Same thing with the hotel, with the red carpet. From what I understand, it was sold, so thank God, I hope. But, you know, the staircase has fallen off, and, you know, it's just not right that no one is looking at this stuff. The other thing is my mother's table restaurant on Penn Avenue. The boards are literally falling down out the facade. And Marshall that owns Tux. I mean, you know, you go to these people and you say, hey, will you do something to look at me like I'm an idiot? Well, I try my best. But there's no enforcement. You know, it amazes me because there's so many people living downtown. You can't even get a rental downtown. So that should tell you something about, you know, what we need to do. I mean, I sell real estate and I promote this town every chance I can. And the downtown has come a long way. But there are things that are just not enforced. And, you know, people say to me, well, you know, the owners aren't gonna, you know, they're not gonna pay the fine or whatever. What's the solution? I just don't know what it is, but it's safety. And it just, I'm just so frustrated with it. And then the other thing is, which I call the county on it, the county owns the parking lot where the bakery was on Lackawanna Avenue. The sidewalk is falling apart, and I hope you people know about a lot of the sidewalks downtown. I guess in the 80s, the cement was put in, and there were, they put like fake bricks on them. It's a mess. And I said to him, I forget his name, Chris, or no, I forget his name over at the county. Oh no, Mark Dewar. He said, well, the city's going to give us money for grants for sidewalk. Is that true? Is there money out there for sidewalks that you guys know of?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a specific grant for that unless, that it hasn't come before council, but I will check into that.
Okay, because first of all, I don't think the county should ask for money there. I mean, they paved the parking lot and they could fix the sidewalk, that's easy. But then again, in the ordinance, which a couple businesses have done, is they blacktop the sidewalk. And it states in there that you need to replace it with cement. And no one enforces it. I mean, you look all over town and there's macadam. It just looks awful. It looks absolutely horrible, but there's no enforcement. I'd love to do this job and do it for free. But no one would pay the fines, but no one's enforcing them. I mean, I just don't understand. Someone said to me, you gotta speak out a little bit. So I'm speaking out today, but I'm going to be back because no one's answering me at the mayor's office, and everyone looks at me like, what are you worried about? Well, I'm worried about downtown. I love being here. And a lot of people love being downtown. So I hope that, something can be done. And that's only the surface of, what some of my thoughts are. So if any of you have any insight on this, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Mr. Simeon, and what we'll do is, we'll have Mr. Voldenberg contact each department and make sure that your concerns get to the right people, and we'll find out why you haven't been getting return calls. And
all right, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
I would just like to add as well, Mr. Simeon, if you'd like to meet and we can further discuss your issues with the downtown, I'd appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That exhausts the sign-in sheet for tonight. Does anyone else, would anyone else like to address council? Okay.
Fifth order, 5A, motions.
Councilman Schuster, do you have any motions or comments tonight?
Just that I'd like to thank Mr. Voldenberg for his outreach and follow-up on my questions regarding, first of all, the utility poles. I saw that we got some answers on the utility poles, not all of them, and we're waiting for those. Also, a sign on North Fillmore and Pettibone, I took a drive past that. It's not in there yet, so I'll be following up with you on that. Also, lighting on Boulevard Ave and the McDonough Ave piece. So with that, there'll just be some issues that I'll follow up with you later on. And I guess the last question is the health coordinator. It was brought up in public comment tonight about whether this position is going to go into the budget after 3 years. I think it's something that we do need to look into, and I expect to get that answer soon. That is all.
Thank you. Councilman McAndrew, any motions or comments tonight?
Yes, two concerns. A couple concerned residents reached out to me about a property on 1210 Academy Street over in West Scranton. My understanding, it's been an abandoned property for 6 years, all right? And the landlord doesn't really take care of the property. It's in disarray. He does somewhat, cuts the grass with a weed whacker once in a while, which is, that's not sufficient. So because it's vacant, there tends to be a bunch of young people smoking marijuana on this property, or sneaking into the property or on the back. So there's criminal activity, there's some safety issues, there's some blight. Mr. Voldenberg, could you please check on this property for me or the concerned neighbors and get some feedback? They don't think it's, they have a rental registration, so please check on that. Alert the police department about the criminal activity, and I'll send you all this in the form of an email too. Secondly, maybe a month and a half ago, we requested a traffic study done on St. Anne Street with regards to angle parking. I haven't heard anything yet. I don't know where they're at with the study. If you could please circle around and see if has been any progress made, or they come to some type of recommendation for us.
I will.
And the health coordinator, I have a couple concerns about that, too. I'm not a waiver guy. I demonstrated in the past I'm against them. I don't know how this is going to be presented. I know there's a grant, but does that grant include benefits? If the benefits are going to be provided by the city, then that's technically an employee who needs a waiver, or to remain living outside of the city. So I look forward to having some of them answers on that situation. That is all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rothchild, any motions or comments tonight?
No, none at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Donahue, any motions or comments tonight?
Yes, just quickly, I did get a request from a few business owners on Kapause Avenue to see if we could look into a four-way stop sign at the corner of Kapause and Walnut. A lot of businesses have opened up there, and there's more people crossing the street, and they've been having some traffic issues. So if we'd be able to send that request along, Mr. Voldenberg, to the police department and the city engineer to see if they could look into the feasibility of that. Also, would you be able to see if we can get an update on some of the properties we sent to LIPS a couple weeks ago, see if anything moved forward with that?
I'll take care of
especially the city-owned property, because I think that email was sent separately on the corner of Maple and Pittston. And also, I was happy to see the county taking the first step last week to conducting a reassessment by putting out bids to see how much it will actually cost. Like I said, it is an important first step, but I would just like to reiterate, I know I've said this a bunch of times from up here, but claims that a reassessment is a ploy to increase revenues is nonsense, and quite frankly, that would be illegal. Any reassessment has to be revenue neutral. So for example, the city's 2021 budget has just over $35 million for real estate tax revenue. If a reassessment was done tomorrow, that $35 million would be the same exact number in 2022 as it was in 2021. It just simply cannot increase. Reassessment is about fairness and equity, that you're paying what your house is actually worth, not what it was worth based off a formula on what it was worth 50 years ago. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. I just have a few comments tonight. First, just to respond again to Mr. Morgan, who spoke tonight about the letter he sent back in March of 2020. Actually two of the things that he mentions in this letter is, number one, abolish the home rule charter and reclassify the city from Class 2A to a Class 3A city, and put these questions on the ballot, and then wants our opinion on that. President Kennedy said once that too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. Before you do something like abolish the home rule charter or reclassify the city from a 2A to a 3A, you actually have to think about it and make sure that you know what the repercussions would be. Obviously, we can't just abolish the home rule charter. You have to have something in place. I happen to think that this form of government, the strong mayor and council form, works. I like this form of government. I've been involved with it now for the last 8 years. Do we need to update the home rule charter? Sure. Are there changes that probably have to be made? Sure. But to just abolish it and then to throw out things like reclassify the city and then you just ask for an opinion. You have to think about these things, and there's a process that you have to go through before you dive into those suggestions. But I did ask Solicitor Hayes to take a look at what that process entails. Our solicitor, Mr. Hayes, drafted a letter to the Auditor General, as was mentioned last week, requesting a performance audit of the permitting processes of the DEP in relation to the expansion of the landfill. We're going to hold off on sending that because Dunmore is also interested in joining, and there may be other boroughs as well. So it will be, I think, more powerful if we send it as a group rather than just the city. We did receive several appointment letters or letters of interest rather, and resumes from city residents who were interested in serving on the zoning board. we are in the process of reviewing those, and next week we should have an idea of who we'll choose for those, and then Solicitor Hayes will draft legislation. I spoke with Mr. Priambo, the DPW director, this morning. He invited all of council to an informational meeting to review and discuss department internal and external operations, which I appreciated very much. And then we also, Councilman Donahue invited Mr. Priambo and his crew at the DPW to a public caucus to inform council of what's going on at the DPW and some of the operations down there. So hopefully that will occur within the next few weeks. We did not receive an update yet on the Meadowbrook Creek project. I do expect that soon. Several neighbors have reached out to me who are concerned with their backyards and just a general update. So I'm hoping to have something by next week. I received a resident complaint about 2234, 2236 Brown Avenue. This is down in the plot section of the city. There was a structure that was destroyed by flames, and it's still standing there since May of 2020. It is on the demolition list. I inquired with Ms. Cipriani from OECD on that. Also, I did provide Mrs. Jeffries with an answer to her question from, I think, 2 weeks ago about the amount of money received on the city's decommissioned vehicles. And that document, if anyone's interested in looking at the listing, can be found online on the city's website and then on the DPW page. A meeting has been set with officials from DEP and the city regarding the flooding on Leggett's Creek and Leech Creek. That'll be Thursday, June 24th at 9 a.m. The mayor, city officials, DPW, DEP, and the affected residents will be there, and hopefully we can come to some sort of resolution. And that's all I have for this week. Thank you.
5B for introduction and ordinance, amending file of the council number 10, 2020, an ordinance as amended entitled authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to grant a special encroachment permit to city retail businesses and restaurants to operate on city right-of-ways to extend the time period until December 31st, 2021.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I'll be voting in favor of this. This is amending file of the council number 10 from 2020, in which we gave restaurants and small businesses the ability to allow their patrons and the businesses to operate on the city's right-of-way due to COVID regulations and everything else that happened last year, and then we continue to face, and the struggle that small businesses face. So I think that it's good for the small businesses and restaurants within the city. This will extend it until December 31st, 2021, and it will waive all of the fees on the special encroachment permit. So I'll be voting yes. Anyone else on the question?
Yes, I'm strongly in favor of this to help recoup some revenues that, were lost with the pandemic. This was devastating to restaurants and area businesses. So I'm very happy to see we're going to extend this.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5C for introduction and ordinance, amending file of the council number 35, 2020, an ordinance as amended entitled General City Operating Budget 2021 by transferring $76,800 from account number as noted, non-departmental expenditures contingency to account number as noted, Department of Public Works, refuse rental and vehicle equipment to provide sufficient funding for the rental of 2 refuse vehicles through the 2021 budget period.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, as I was going through this, there was a few questions that came to mind, and I know Dr. Rothchild and others had the same type of questions. What kind of vehicles these are that we're renting? Excuse me, there was nothing budgeted for this account line item in the 2021 budget, and there were some questions as to how much each vehicle costs and like a better explanation, I think, for this item. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, on the
Yes,
question.
on the question, I just wanted to express my disappointment in the lack of details that we received with some of these pieces of legislation. You know, we're, as a council, supposed to be the fiscal watchdogs, and of course, that's why this has come to our desks, but, you know, it's a good chunk of money, and we need to make sure we know what we're getting for it and why this transfer is necessary, and just have some more details on what the money is going towards. So I would like to request more of that information from the administration before moving ahead on this legislation.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, so also on the question, I was glad to hear that other council members had similar questions to I when I was looking through this, the documentation here. And I think maybe getting some of the answers to those questions might get into the bigger picture of vehicle maintenance when it comes to DPW, so it might help moving forward into the future with maintenance of the vehicles.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just on, just one thing we could add to this too is what is the extent to, that the current garbage trucks that these are replacing need to be repaired? And what work needs to go into that?
Anyone else?
Yeah, also, if I could throw in there, I think at one point in time, the city did look into the replacing of older vehicles, and again, looking at the bigger picture here, it might be, it might bring some of that to the surface as to how we're going to replace vehicles that are in need of replacement and repair.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of, oh, I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
It's all right. The way I look at it is, come on, it's $76,800. It's for 2 vehicles for the remainder of the year. That's $6,000 a month to rent each vehicle. So it wasn't budgeted for, so I definitely need more information because I have zero.
Thank you. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5D for introduction, an ordinance amending file of the council number 35, 2020, an ordinance as amended entitled General City Operating Budget 2021 by transferring $103,000 from account number as noted, non-departmental expenditures contingency to account number as noted, Department of Public Works, garages, service, and maintenance fee for the payment of the fire department ladder truck repairs.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the acceptance of the grant funds by the City of Scranton from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, for the 2015 Local Share Account Grant Gaming Funds, Monroe County, in the amount of $225,000 to convert the Sorrenti Memorial Army Reserve Center, located at 1801 Pine Street, into an emergency services center, and authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to accept the grant, coordinate, and disperse the grant funds as appropriate.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? One of the questions that came up during the caucus was how we're going to use these funds, the $225,000 towards the Sorrenti Center. So we are going to ask Chief Nemeka and any other representatives from the city to come into a caucus and give us a general update on the Sorrenti Center and what the status is. And we'd also like a breakdown of costs spent on the building to date. We've received something in the past, and we'll have Mr. Voldenberg go back in the files and look, because we've requested this before, and they did provide the information, but we just want an updated version of that now that we're going to spend an additional $225,000. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
Sixth order, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, Resolution Number 175, 2021, amending Resolution Number 47, 2011, entitled Authorizing, Empowering, and Directing the Mayor and Other Appropriate City Officials to Appoint Liaisons Between the City of Scranton and Berkheimer, the duly appointed collector of earned income tax for the Lackawanna County Tax Collection District, for the express purpose of sharing confidential tax information with the district for official purposes, to update City of Scranton representatives authorized to receive confidential tax information.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of 7A.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Oh, sorry. On the question, Mr. Donahue did discuss, rather than putting names on this piece of legislation, if we could do positions, that if, in the case of, if anyone was ever to switch out of any of these positions, it would be the position that would be able to gain this information rather than the person. And we did discuss in caucus that there may be an option to amend this in the future if that's, so we'll keep that discussion alive.
Okay. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, Resolution Number 176, 2021, accepting the gift of office furniture from AHT Insurance, including but not limited to 8 chairs, 2 tables, 1 bookcase, and 2 coat racks for the office of the mayor.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As the chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of 7B.
Second?
On the question?
On the question, I forgot to mention in fifth order, Ms. Hodawans asked the price of this, and we did get an answer saying that it was under $500. And I also reached out to Mr. Voldenberg to see if it was going through the Ethics Committee, and it seems to be on the proper track to go through the Ethics Board.
Thank you. And this insurance company is located in 40 Fort, 1575 Wyoming Avenue, and they do not do business with the city. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
And Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, Resolution Number 177, 2021, authorizing PennDOT to request railroad crossing upgrades with the structure replacement of West Lackawanna Avenue over Norfolk Southern from the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, Resolution Number 178, 2021, reappointing Robert Gattens, 528 Orchard Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, for an additional 5-year term as a member of the Zoning Hearing Board for the City of Scranton. Mr. Gattens' term will expire on July 1st, 2021. Mr. Gattens' new term will commence on July 2nd, 2021, and expire on July 1st, 2026.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question?
I would just like to thank Mr. Gattens on his continued support and devotion to our city. He does a lot of great things for the residents.
I'd also like to echo my colleague's sentiment on Mr. Gattens, that I'm happy to see that he'll be returning to the Zoning Hearing Board.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
8th order, no business at this time.
Before we adjourn the meeting, Ms. Hodawanis, I forgot to address the questions that you asked. The first question you asked was about an update on the discussions between, if you want to call them that, between the Tax Claim Bureau and the city. We were informed that those discussions are still ongoing, so I don't really have anything to update, but I do know that there's still, those issues that were brought to light in the newspaper are being discussed by those officials. The CBA's on the city website. Mr. Voldenberg, if you can just ask the IT department what the deal is with that. They were on the city website, then they were off, so if you could check on that. I think we addressed the Sorrenti Center, so hopefully we'll have information on that. And also, I know that you asked about the controller's report, and we'll have an answer for you next week. Okay? There's no further business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.